You're watching the Health Now Nutrition Podcast, advancing our holistic and nutrition industry one story at a time. Presenting your host, Michelle Post.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Health Now Nutrition Inc. channel, and we're having our amazing contributor for the Saved by Nutrition book, Kristin Leeper, and I'm so excited to have her back. You may have seen her podcast from before. I'm just going to give her a nice little introduction as well. So you'll see this in the book. You want to get that book. Kristin loves working with both men and women to help them rebalance their hormones and promote enhanced mental wellness. She enjoys developing low-sugar, gluten-free recipes and providing no-nonsense wellness advice on her blog, What? Super cute, super fun. Nutrition Demystified. She's also the owner and founder of KristinTalksHormones.com and was recently a guest on the Declaration podcast on mental health, where she provided an evidence-based overview of the relationship between nutrition and psychological well-being. This is going to be a great topic because that's pretty much where we're talking today. In her spare time, Kristin loves baking, doing yoga, practicing her creative writing, and honing her language skills in French, Spanish, and German. That is fantastic. I've always loved languages. People who can speak more than one language, just they get me every time. I just love that. If you want to get in touch with Kristin, you can feel free to contact her via phone at 613-862-5952, or you can even email her at KristinTalksHormones@gmail.com. And we're going to put the links in order to be able to contact Kristin herself once we get this out for you to view. So welcome again to our show, Kristin. I'm so excited to see you.
Me too. I'm so excited to be back. Thank you for having me on again.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, I hope to continue to have you on, as we continue to go through the years sharing amazing health and wellness that we've got. So again, Kristin is the author, the contributor in the book for Saved by Nutrition. And what was your story again? Oh, food sensitivities and anxiety.
Yes.
Right? And it's such an impactful story. You want to give us a little overview of it?
Sure. Yeah. So I started off my story by talking about a visit that I had to a doctor's office when I was 21. And I went to the doctor because I thought I had a heart problem. And it turned out that my heart was fine, but all the palpitations and the trouble breathing and the tightness in my chest, those were actually anxiety symptoms. And so I detailed in my story like different things that I tried, to get rid of the anxiety, some a little bit more healthy in terms of coping mechanisms. I tried some medication. I went to see some specialists and then some not so healthy things. So we talked about this, but the university culture of binge drinking made it really easy to drink to try and bring the edge off of the anxiety. And we talked about on my last visit, I think, how I'd start drinking and wouldn't be able to stop because the feeling of calmness was it was addicting.
Oh my gosh. I found that same thing when I was a smoker. Yes, I smoked, people. I think I've told you that once or twice for numerous years, that I was always good when I was smoking, when I had the cigarette in my hand. But the moment I put it down or put it out, the anxiety would come right back. So that's why I still wanted to keep smoking, because I didn't have an outlet.
Yeah. And when you find something that works, when you're that anxious, I think even though you know in your brain that it's not a real solution, it's not a healthy coping mechanism, you're just so desperate to feel better that I think you're willing to try those things.
Right? It does explain how there are so many people who are addicts of so many different things and why they would be, and including addictions to food as well. Yeah. Food is a huge coping mechanism as well.
Definitely.
So super interesting. So what ended up happening for you that you ended up starting to get to the healthier plane?
So we need to fast forward a few years. It took a long time of trialing out different things and also just reaching a point where I was just so frustrated that I gave up on trying to fix it for a while. And at the same time that I started getting all of the anxiety, I started getting a lot of, I'll call it general digestive upset. But I had lots of cramping, lots of pain, horrible constipation. I was bloated so often, I actually changed what I wore to try and just cover up the bloating. But I eventually, on a whim, went to see a naturopath because one of my friends did. And that's when we really started to dig into what was really going on. And one of the things for me that we believe was contributing to both the gut issues and the anxiety were undiagnosed food sensitivities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting. So you were able to find out what those were and then clear that out of your diet, your regular diet.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for you to actually start feeling, better?
That's a good question. Once I knew about the food sensitivities, I would say there was an element of relief at the beginning, just by finally cutting those things out and allowing them to clear. But and I think this was something that I hadn't realized, and that was a frustrating piece at first, because there were so many other pieces of the puzzle. It took a lot longer to really start feeling better. I would say it took more along the lines of months. So for the extreme pain, it was pretty, within a few weeks, but the rest of it took months. But now, if you want to fast forward a bit, now if I do eat one of the things I'm sensitive to, that's when I have the really intense pain. But otherwise, normally I don't experience that very often.
Amazing. Amazing. So just so all you viewers know, we are talking with Kristin Leeper. And if you want to get in contact with her, you can find her at 613-862-5952, or you can even email her at kristintalkshormones.com. Excellent. So when you go to, so sometimes you eat things that aren't working for you, but that's when you know if it was in the food that you've had, the food that you've ordered. How did you start your life knowing that you had these sensitivities and still going out? And like, how did you manage to change that?
It can be a tricky thing, and I think it's kind of ironic because I'm cutting out these foods because I know that if I eat them, it can contribute to depression and anxiety. But then you're going out for food and you're trying to avoid these foods, and it can make you very anxious. But the biggest thing I would say is that it's a mindset shift, and it's going to be an adjustment period. I have a system with kitchen, and making sure you're asking the right questions and making sure that you're always double checking, even if something looks good. I think it's always good to ask and to just let the kitchen know. And then also too, Google has become my best friend. There's lots of ways that you can go to a restaurant's website and look up the menu, and restaurants are getting really good at coding their menus. So you'll have like a little gluten-free symbol or a little vegan symbol. And if it's vegan, it's dairy-free, things like that.
Yeah.
And recently when we traveled, and I stumbled upon this completely by accident, but travel bloggers are really great resources because you actually have some travel bloggers with food sensitivities. I found a really fantastic account on Instagram, actually, for eating gluten-free in Boston. And I ended up messaging her just to say I was excited I found her account, and she sent me a huge list of restaurants to try. And it actually made our whole trip. Yeah, just being able to go to these different places and just feel comfortable.
That's so smart. I never thought of that one. I just know you can ask. And people don't know they have the right to ask. Or to ask for specific foods that are not on the menu, because kitchens have it all. So you can actually, put whatever dish you want together. So that for me has always been the biggest stumbler, is to allow people to know that, you have the right to ask. You have a right to know what's going into your food, whether it's in a restaurant or not. So super fun though. Travel bloggers, that's super smart. My God. So why don't you give us a little bit more information about food sensitivities?
Sure. So food sensitivity, and I think this topic can be confusing and overwhelming because we have allergies and sensitivities and intolerances, but a food sensitivity specifically is a reaction to a protein in a food, and it's actually an immune system reaction to a food protein. So it involves your white blood cells. And so what happens for me if I eat wheat, for example, is that my immune system has mistakenly flagged the wheat protein as a foreign invader. So it looks at that wheat as a potential threat to the body. So like a virus or a bacteria, you know, something that could cause harm. And so the immune system actually attacks it. And so I feel digestive upset when I eat it. I get like pregnancy level bloating.
Wow.
And I was talking about this recently with someone, actually, just the amount of pain and just how painful it is. You know, we're talking potentially fetal position on the floor. It's brutal, but it's also, it actually is a stressor for the immune system.
Yeah.
And so if you consume it long term, it can be exhausting for the body because it thinks that it's fighting off something that's trying to hurt you, even though it's just food and it can't actually, you know, make you sick. Yeah. And so it can actually make you tired.
Exhausted.
Use your rundown.
Yeah. I have that issue as well. So, yeah, fantastic. So great idea, or great, you know, information about what a food sensitivity is. So when you go out and travel, okay, so that's fantastic. Now, whether food sensitivities are necessary or permanent, do people have the ability to change that?
So I feel like with many things in nutrition, the answer is it depends. Sometimes, yes.
Right?
Yeah, sometimes, yes, it will just be a temporary thing. Sometimes it can be from, if we're eating a food all the time, our body might become sensitized to it. And so it may just need a break from that food. And we were talking earlier actually about leaky gut. And so with leaky gut, so the lining of your intestines is supposed to be almost impenetrable. Only the tiniest molecules of food that are fully digested should be able to get through. But if we have a lot of inflammation, a lot of digestive upset, bacterial imbalances, the lining of the intestine can actually become leaky. And so what that means is that you have some undigested food proteins that should be broken down further that shouldn't get through, but they do. And so then what can happen is that your immune system will see this undigested food protein that is not supposed to be there, and that can be why it gets flagged as the food sensitivity.
Yeah.
And so if that happens, sometimes you have all these foods coming through that keep getting flagged, but if you can eliminate the foods and do some work to hopefully repair that gut lining and to get it back to being not leaky, sometimes you can reintroduce those foods after a period of time and it's okay. But I do want to stress that it's sometimes. So I had a mile-long list of food sensitivities, and I no longer do, but I do have the two to wheat and dairy that so far, anyway, you know, you never know, but so far that seems to be here to stay for now.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So basically, rebuilding the gut lining can help with food sensitivities. Absolutely. Other things that I know about is rebuilding the enzymes that help break foods down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have much?
Absolutely.
Can you share a story about that as well?
Well, for me, yes, absolutely. So for me, one of my issues when I went to the naturopath is we found that I had low stomach acid. And so your stomach acid helps really kickstart digestion. Of course, you have your chewing in your mouth and you have some enzymes in your saliva, but a huge piece at the beginning of digestion is your stomach acid that helps break everything down. And you actually need your food exiting your stomach to be a certain level of acidity in order to trigger the release of digestive enzymes from your pancreas and bile as well from your gallbladder. And if you don't have, it's called the acid trigger, then you don't actually have the release of all of those things to help digest your food. And I can tell you from personal experience, you are not going to feel very good. So we did a lot of work to increase my stomach acid. I actually took, it's called betaine hydrochloride. And so it's a supplement form of stomach acid to help increase that acidity and then also help with the, trigger the release of those enzymes.
Yeah, that's actually really fascinating because what I've seen working with people is that they usually have low stomach acid versus higher stomach acid. Yet the medications are there to dumb it down because the pain that you feel even with low stomach acid is because there's no cushion between the mucous membrane and the lining. So
yeah, and it can be quite confusing because symptoms of low stomach acid can actually cause heartburn, and so you feel super acidic, but the issue is actually like a lack of acidity, and so I think that can be quite confusing. I think it's because esophageal sphincter that's separating the stomach from the esophagus. If our acidity is too low, then that sphincter actually opens and you can have a backflow. And even though you're not acidic enough, that means it's still going to burn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So great information to share as well. Kristin is also going to be sharing her wonderful recipe that she did while she was going through her getting rid of all the rest of the sensitivities from her diet. So I'm excited to actually share that. So
Awesome.
You started to change your diet up, got rid of the food sensitivities, and how did that affect your the depression that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so it really did help it start to lift, to make things kind of not feel so bleak. And it really helped as well. Just, I would say, like, take the extreme edge off the anxiety. It wasn't that my anxiety just vanished, as lovely as that would be. That's sometimes not realistic to expect. But it did definitely help, like, take the extreme edge off, where you're a little bit more functional and more able to tackle some of the, the things in your life that are also, I think, potentially making you anxious.
Absolutely. So what is the exposure to undetected food sensitivities, and how do they wreak havoc on the psychological factors of people?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that can be happening. And so I think my favorite explanation, I just think this is the coolest. Maybe it's my psych background, but when you have inflammation somewhere in your body, so in my case, I had a lot of inflammation in the gut from all the white blood cells rushing in to, neutralize these attackers, even though it was just a wheat protein. And you have all of this digestive upset, bacterial imbalances. And when you have inflammation in the gut, you can actually end up with inflammation anywhere else in your body, especially if you have leaky gut and all of these things are getting into your bloodstream. And so what I suspect may have been happening is that I had inflammation in the brain as a result of the leaky gut, and that's called neuroinflammation. And we talked in nutrition school about how neuroinflammation can be implicated in mental health issues like depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And then another one, when I think about the food sensitivities, is just you have all of this inflammation, you have all this digestive upset, you know that you're not breaking things down properly. And so one of the other things that I suspect may have been happening is actually just a lack of absorption. And I remember being really thin at that time, and I think part of it was just I could not take in what I needed from my food.
Yeah.
And so, there we go. And so if you can't take in what you need, you're not taking in minerals like magnesium that help you relax, or maybe you're not taking in B vitamins, and B vitamins are really helpful to manage your stress response, things like that. And then the last thing is that I mentioned earlier how when you are eating these foods that you're sensitive to, it can be stressful and it can leave you exhausted. And so if you get run down and exhausted, and the technical term for that is adrenal fatigue, one of the symptoms is actually low energy because you're just not making enough of your stress hormone of cortisol, to feel energized and ready to tackle your day. And that low energy and lack of yeah, me too. And that low energy and lack of motivation, that can show up as symptoms of depression as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what was it like for you then when you actually started to discover that you didn't have those negative self-talk and that your energy was, starting to skyrocket there?
Yeah, it's been a slow process, but also a really rewarding process. And I think anybody maybe who's had some mental health issues can relate. You're just so excited about the little things. You're like, I had enough energy to do and fold the laundry, or you're like, I washed all of my dishes, or, I actually did that task that I've been procrastinating for a year because I just was so exhausted. Like, you're just so excited about, about the little things
Absolutely.
that are happening. Yeah. And the things you're able to do.
Right. Absolutely. Once you've lost that energy and that will to do anything, it really does become exciting when nothing is in your way and you're just doing it anyway.
Yeah.
It's super exciting. I super understand that one so much. So thank you for sharing all of that. Now, I'm super excited about the recipe. I keep clapping because it's a good one. So we'll be putting up the recipe card as well during the video. But you've given us this wonderful, again, we'll be sharing this via video, recipe card for fast fettuccine Alfredo. So can you share a bit about this amazing recipe?
Yeah, I love this recipe. This is one of my favorites. And so I actually came up with this version of the recipe because I was having a really rough mental health day. And I knew I needed to eat, and I wanted to eat something that was filling and substantial. But I just did not have the energy to go to the grocery store or to, chop a bunch of things or, wait for an hour and a half for something to cook. And I think that's okay. It's okay to have days like that and honor that. So that was how I came up with it. I cut out a whole bunch of steps and a whole bunch of ingredients, and it turned out great. So, and then this recipe, it's fettuccine Alfredo, but it's actually wheat-free and dairy-free. So I think it's good for satisfying those cravings, but it's not going to give you a stomach ache if you've got
Absolutely.
sensitivities.
Now, the one thing that we wanted to touch on as well is the difference between a wheat allergy or sensitivity versus a gluten sensitivity. Can you share a little bit about
Yes.
that?
Yeah, that's such a confusing topic. And so a wheat sensitivity is a specific immune system reaction to the protein in wheat. And wheat is a very common grain, especially here in Canada, in North America. And so wheat is, when you think about things like all-purpose flour, that has wheat in it. So everything made from all-purpose flour. So bread and cookies and pastas, pastries, as well as a lot of processed foods, because wheat flour is commonly added to actually thicken things up.
Yeah.
So it's very sneaky. And certain beers, not every beer, but a lot of beers can have wheat in them. And then gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, barley, rye. So it's very similar. And I think that's why there's so much crossover, since wheat is our main protein. If it has wheat in it, it has gluten.
Right.
But if you think about things like 100% rye bread, so that really dark rye, or if you're getting just a barley grain, or certain beers, so if they're beers that are just made with barley and don't have any wheat added, then those are wheat free, but they still contain gluten. And so that's where that distinction can come in.
Yeah.
So functionally they're very similar, but wheat free or wheat sensitivity is still a little bit less restrictive. And I think knowing that distinction can really help, because I still can drink beer on occasion, and that's really, I just have to check the brand. And so
Right.
that kind of stuff can be exciting when you've already cut stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you cut out so much, when you find out you're allergic to so many different things.
Yeah, exactly. Don't make it more restrictive than you need to.
Right. Now, one thing we didn't talk about yet was also the addictive factor of foods that you're allergic to.
Yes. And so we talked about that, like the stress response in the body, the adrenal response, because when you eat that food, it feels like it's being attacked. And so that sounds like a really bad thing, and it's definitely not great, but it's actually stimulating for the body. And so I think that can be one of the reasons that we crave these foods, because we're actually craving that little energy boost that we get when we consume them. It's just long-term, it's actually going to deplete energy.
Yeah. There's so many people that are totally addicted to all the different types of foods that they're allergic to out there because of that boost. So we feel while we're eating it. Same thing with the smoking and the drinking. We feel good while we're eating it. And then afterwards, we don't feel so good. Why?
Definitely an understatement.
I felt great while I was eating it. What's the problem now? So super fun. So give us a little rundown on this amazing fast fettuccine Alfredo recipe. Like, I'm excited to try this one myself. So
I'm so excited to hear what you think.
Oh my gosh.
So for this recipe, it's quite simple. I think there's 6 ingredients. So your wheat-free pasta, you just use a brown rice fettuccine, and it cooks pretty much the same as a regular wheat pasta. And then for Alfredo sauce, your sort of secret ingredient is cashews. Cashews are really fantastic for a cream sauce. Yeah. And they also have some really great fats for us as well. So also it's like some nice nutrients for us too. So I like this recipe for the comfort factor, but that is kind of a bonus. And then I eliminated any chopping. So you actually just use garlic powder and onion powder to flavor, in addition to salt and pepper. So it's quite simple, but it's really flavorful. And I really like this, especially on cold days, but I mean, you can have pasta. I love pasta. You can have pasta whenever you
Great. Oh gosh, I love pastas too. I usually stay away from it 99% of the time. And there's some wonderful bean pastas out there as well. If you can handle that, not all of us can handle the bean pasta, but every once in a while it's like, oh my God, it's so good. So this is going to be a fantastic recipe. So you've got cup of raw cashews, a tablespoon of onion powder, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. And really, your idea of garlic powder, people out there, is what makes you happy. You know, because I'm going to double that easy. I love garlic
Go for
so
it.
much.
Go for it.
1.5 cups of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and then your rice fettuccine pasta, or your favorite gluten-free, wheat-free pastas as well out there. So this is just fantastic. So we will be sharing a picture of that, and you know, making sure that you get this recipe, because holy cow, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I just love it, because I have been craving exactly this. I've been craving fettuccine Alfredo, and it's like, I can't have it. I just know. So super fun. I love it. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. Do you have any advice or anything you want to share with anyone before we go?
Sure. I think when it comes to the food sensitivities, I think it can be really discouraging. I remember feeling really discouraged because it's such a learning curve, especially if it's something like wheat that is in so many of our foods, or dairy. I think in North America especially, we love our dairy. And so it can, feel really overwhelming, but it does get a lot easier. You learn, and there are so many resources out there now. Especially, that travel blogger that I found, which was just on a whim.
Smart.
And so I think just take heart if you suspect you have a food sensitivity, or you've just learned that you have them, or you've been dealing with it for a long time. It gets easier. And for me, just the difference in mood and the lack of abdominal pain has been so worth it.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to know more about Kristin, she is in the book Saved by Nutrition. You can order your book from Kristin, or of course, your favorite contributing author from the book as well. So if you want to learn more about Kristin, or you want to get in touch with her, you can email her at kristintalkshormones@gmail.com and get more information about her fantastic recipes. Oh my God, so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing everything you did today, and I look forward to having you back again. So exciting.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me again.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you soon.
Hi, I'm Kristin Leeper, and today we're making some fast fettuccine Alfredo. So I already have my rice noodles cooking on the stove here, and we're going to add a cup of cashews. So we'll toss that in here. Go. Okay. So both of these need to cook for about 10 minutes. And for the rice noodles, I used this brand, the Tinkiata, there we go, which I found in my local grocery store, and I got the fettuccine style brown rice pasta, but you can use any style of rice noodles you want, it doesn't matter. Or you can also use some of the spiralized zucchini noodles, whether you buy them all ready to go or whether you spiralize it yourself. And that can be great if you're looking for a lower carb option, but my personal favorite is with the spaghetti rice noodles. And for the cashews, the reason that we're boiling them for 10 minutes is just to soften them and make them a little bit more digestible. And because this part, as I said, is only 10 minutes, it's pretty quick, so I find it's a good time to have a solo dance party, or some karaoke in your kitchen, or even just to take a moment to take a few deep breaths and start relaxing as you prepare for dinner. So the cashews and the rice pasta have both finished cooking, and I've drained both. So now it's time to make our sauce. So first up, we're just going to put in 1.5 cups of water. Mine's from the tap. You can use filtered water if you want to be really fancy. And then we are going to add our spices. So there's 4 spices in this recipe, and they're typically ones you'd already have in the kitchen. So I've got my black pepper, my sea salt, onion powder, and garlic powder. So we'll go ahead and toss those in. There we go. And then the last ingredient we're going to be adding are the cashews, which are of course the creamy base for the sauce. It's sort of the secret ingredient to make this a dairy-free Alfredo sauce. And if your blender is like mine and can't have anything that's boiling hot in it, it's good to just let these cool for a couple minutes before you toss them in. All right, and then we're gonna blend that up for a minute and our sauce will be all ready to go. So once you've made your sauce, all that remains is to pour it on top of the noodles. And here you go. This is fast fettuccine Alfredo, which is wheat and dairy free, and it's made from ingredients that you may already have on hand. And as a bonus, it's ready in 15 minutes or less.
You've been watching the Health Now Nutrition Podcast with Michelle Post. For more information on how you can be part of the holistic and nutrition movement, visit www.healthnow.today to book your meeting.